half. I think Q did an outstanding job just kind of steadying the ship the entire year, being patient and realistic, voice of reason. I think there was a point during the season that going into August, like early August, it was like real concern. We've got 60 games to play. We've got to keep this thing moving in the right direction. And every one of those games is important. And the way we played over the last 60 games, I thought was outstanding. A lot of improvement in a lot of areas. The wins and losses weren't exactly where we wanted to be, and we'll talk more about that. But the steadiness and patience that he showed, I think, rubbed off on our coaching staff. The pitching department did an excellent job. Everything that we were trying to accomplish last year in the hiring process, collaboration, different ideas, hearing people talk about pitching, that happened. And I think our pitching processes have moved forward the way we expected them to. We do expect better results in time, but right now we like what we're seeing as far as what's going on behind the curtain. Also, I want to say the same thing about our hitting department because it was a tough first half of the year. Alex Zumwalt, Keone, this is their second year doing it, so they're learning a lot along the way. Watching how we performed and executed in certain situations, and again in the last 60 games, was much better than it was in the first 100 games. And I think they learned a lot as well. So we're very happy with that staff. We may continue to look to grow the staff, but as far as the key players on the staff, they'll all be back. With all that being said, I think Q and I, he's been very upfront about this. 106 losses is a difficult thing to take. There was a lot of challenges along the way. It's not what our expectations are. Our expectations are much greater. We accept responsibility for that. Just talking to players at the end of the year, I think they are in agreement with us. Their performance needs to be better. There was a lot of growth on their ends. They are getting better. They are maturing. But they know that the results have to be better as well. I think when again, not to harp on the last 60 games, but what we saw in the last 60 games was more what we expected over 162 games. And that will be our expectation next year. I am very happy. Again, I think Q would agree with this. The effort was great this year. Our guys played hard. And if there's one thing we were real clear about from a expectation standpoint, we need effort. And you guys gave us great effort all year long. There was a couple nights it's going to happen over 162 that, yeah, it's a little bit, it's dragging a little bit. But by and large, they played hard, and we appreciate that. The last thing I really want to touch on is going into the year, we had 3 objectives, and I repeated this over and over. We need to figure out what kind of shortstop Bobby was going to be. We're very, very pleased with Bobby Witt Jr. as our shortstop and expect him to play shortstop moving forward. Kyle Isbell, can he play center field? The answer is yes, he can play center field. Just thinking about past center fielders we had, he's a different body type, so that's where our question was. But Izzy played center field really well. Now, Izzy needs to become a more complete player. He knows that, we know that, and he's perfectly capable. But from a defensive standpoint, we're very happy with him in center. And then pitching, this is the one that I don't think we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish from an evaluation standpoint, mainly because a handful of the guys we were referring to were injured, so we didn't get a chance to complete that evaluation. But what I will say is it's not going to stop us from building on what this team, what the 26-man roster needs to look like next year. We're going to push forward. We're not going to wait any longer. We've got to get better. We've got to get deeper with our starting pitching, better with our starting pitching. It's unfortunate that we had the injuries, but there will be healthy competition in that starting rotation, and there may be some other faces in the organization by that point in time. So I think that's all I've got. So.
Just to confirm that this is all in the same role?
Yeah.
And then I just dubbed this year evaluation year, not to put a slogan on 2024, but what's next? What do you hope to see next year?
Well, we gotta see steady improvement. I don't think Q or I want to put any type of expectations on wins and losses, but there's got to be steady improvement. And I will say I don't believe we're truly a 106 loss team. When you walk into that clubhouse and you feel the energy that was in the clubhouse, I think we came up short of what we probably should have won over the course of the year. But our record is what it is. We can't run away from that. So we just want to see improvement, be more competitive in the wins and loss column. And then, the processes, I think, as I referred to, are good. I think they're moving us in the right direction, where I expect the results will be better next year.
And then what's the offseason plan? You mentioned new faces on the.
Yeah. Well, you have starting pitching, you have relief pitching. I mean, there's no question our bullpen has to be addressed. We have to build out a bullpen. We have some guys that are capable that need to be more consistent. He needs to be able to rely on 4 to 5 guys on a nightly basis that can hold a lead. We didn't have that this year, so we have to get more talented and more consistent in that area. Starting rotation has to get deeper. We essentially have 3 guys that we believe are in the rotation right now. The rest of them are competing and may come from the outside. And then also production probably from the outfield more than likely. We do have some versatility that may allow us to think differently, but just on the surface, we got to get more production out of our corner outfield spots.
J.J., you've had all the evaluation time and all the data points. From the outside looking in anyway, it would seem there's still some things you have to figure out about what it meant, what certain guys' seasons meant, maybe a handful of position players. Can you explain a little bit where you go from here on evaluating guys that maybe didn't have the breakthrough season, but you maybe still feel hopeful about?
Yeah, I guess the best way to answer that is we're not going to settle. We don't like talking about this in these terms, but when guys have options, we have opportunity to find players that can beat them out for positions. So if that's the case, that's the case. I think we have a core of position players that will play well defensively for us and can put together runs. I mean, our runs per game in the second half was much better than the first half. I think we'll be able to create runs. We're not going to rely on the home run. We've got to execute situationally better than we did. There's ways, guys, that can help our team without hitting the 3-run homer all the time, and they have to recognize that. So we have to be a complete baseball team. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but
you are. Just sort of another point of clarification. Do you feel like you know enough now, or you're about to enter into a sort of evaluation of what you do from here with X number of position players as well as obviously all the pitching?
Yeah, to get more specific, I think our infield's fairly set. I mean, we expect Vinny Pasquantino to be back next year. Our infield's pretty set. I think, again, the outfield is where the competition's going to be. If we can get a deeper, lineup to be deeper, take some pressure off of some other people, it's got to be a complete team. But I think from where we're going to be hunting this offseason, it's going to be bats more so in the outfield than the infield.
Just the last part of that is, so with the way you address that and the pitching, it sounds like you feel like you'll be, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but certainly looking to bring more people in.
Well, that's a lot. What I was saying, starting pitching, outfield, and bullpen, that's a lot. But that's the goal. That's the objective. That's where we want to go. And make no mistake, I mean, our infield defense was very good, much improved. Pitching is the name of the game. I mean, let's face it. If you give up 2 to 3 to 4 runs a game, you're going to compete more often than if you're giving up 6 or 7. So, I mean, that's as old as the game is long. So we have to spend more of our time, resources, and efforts in looking at how we can acquire pitching to take a lot of pressure off of the offense and just play good defense. And now you're in close games all the time.
Do you have any indication of what payroll might be for next year?
No.
We talked about being transactional last year. I'm wondering, I recognize it's October 3rd, and you're not going to declare that guys are available. Have some positional log jams, certainly on the roster. Do you anticipate potentially trading from the roster to try and improve?
There's a chance we can do that. One of the things that an objective that we should have as a front office is to take pressure off of scouting, player development, international operations. And one of the ways to do that is to be more aggressive and trade, whether it be prospects or off of your major league roster, because there's very few teams in the history of the game, if any, that have won a division with 20 homegrown guys. And when I look out night after night, we're playing 7 to 8 guys every night that are homegrown, which is great. But at the same time, you got to put a team together, and that puts a lot of undue pressure in other areas, and we can help as a front office in being creative with different ideas, not being afraid to make a trade, not sitting here saying we definitely are, but we have to be open to that.
I assume when any team goes in the offseason, they have to ask themselves where are they as far as maybe how close they are to being competitive, how close they are to winning a championship. So, when you ask yourself that question, how close do you think you are to being a team that can compete?
Yeah. This year was an eye-opener. I think what we showed is we weren't ready to compete for our division this year, and I don't think the expectation was that. But the hopes were we were, maybe 24. Right now I can't sit here and say I think 24 is the year that we're going to, definitely win the division. But we expect to get better, and I don't think it's going to take a whole lot. And again, if you look at our division, I think there's a lot of parity in the division. We've got to get to a point where we're competitive night in, night out. And if we, are in that 80 to 85 win range, you're going to be in some sort of race. And that's what we want for our fans. That's what we want for our city. We want them to have a reason to come to the ballpark in September. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you are 10 games up, but we want to give our fans a reason to come to the ballpark. So it's hard to put a timetable on it to say, we expect to win X number of games. I think a lot of it's going to depend on what we do with the roster through the offseason. We'll have a better idea of how well we can compete once we address some of those things.
Sorry, I just want to ask you a question real quick. Your first year, I just wonder, now that you've had a chance to step back from it, where do you think you were able to grow from day one on the job till now, and what do you have certain things in the offseason that you're still sort of evaluating yourself on too?
No, sure. I mean, I've stepped back for 24 hours, so I don't have a full grasp of what the whole, everything that transpired. But, yeah, I mean, it was a tremendous amount of learning. The amount of guys that I interacted with throughout not just the clubhouse, but the whole organization, and learning personalities and learning job responsibilities. And, you specifically step in the clubhouse and you learn what a day-to-day is when I'm in that seat, right? And how to interact with guys, the right timing to do it, the wrong timing to do it. And J.J. mentioned a lot of the staff was in their roles for the first time, so that was all a new thing too, is trying to figure out who needs what on what day, who needs to be pushed, who needs to be patted on the back, and myself included, right? So there's a lot of things away from the X's and O's of on the field that I think I will take away the most from this year.
Fair. Question. Over the years, we have seen this team play great at the end of the year. Start out slow, play great. How do you know this year isn't fool's gold? That it's the same cycle of everybody finally getting into their groove, playing great, and then we go through the offseason, and then we start off with April, May, and June just digging a big hole, because that's been the pattern for over the years. We expect to see the team play well at the end of the season, and it has been kind of deceiving. Mm-hmm. So how do you know this is true evaluation you're getting and not the cycle we've seen for the last few years?
Well, I think we can both probably combine on this one. Yeah, look, we can't sit here and tell you that we think because we had a decent last 60 games that we're going to be a different type of team next year. Again, it's over 162, but we if we didn't play that last month, then we're really questioning, all right, what do we have? But there's a sign of maturity. If you look at the ages on our roster, they did some things that I think are significant as far as speaking to their character, their competitiveness. That left us to be a little more optimistic. Q said something, I think it was last week. Early in August when we went on a little run, that was basically the Bobby Witt show. But then this more recent run was more of a team effort, and Bobby didn't do as much during that time. He didn't have to carry the team. So you look for little signs like that to be optimistic. And because we played better in the last 60 games, we need to be optimistic. I don't think this team is without talent. There are some pretty good players on that field. It's a matter of surrounding them with other players that will help take some pressure off of them so they can be a team, a unit that works together with a common goal. So I would much rather play well the last 60 than not play well. If we didn't play well the last 60, our record might have 120 losses. So I think it says something about the character of the team, the competitiveness, that they competed well, and that's something we can build off of.
Did you want to say anything to that?
Yeah, I understand the nature of the questions, and, I can't speak at all to the previous teams or how they've played. But the one thing that people that heard me day in and day out, right, this is an every single day game. And I understand now we're trying to review 162 games plus 7.5 months of spring training and that whole deal. But that's not really a realistic thing in a baseball team. You don't say, okay, next year we're going to do this for 162. All we can do is say this is what we can bring to the table on a nightly basis. And I think what J.J. is saying is exactly right. If we can put ourselves in a position that we're comfortable competing more consistently night in and night out, whether that's from bullpen depth or starting depth or bats in the outfield, whatever the positional upgrades are that we have to be opportunistic to make, they're going to put us in a better position to compete night in and night out from one pitch, one inning, one game at a time. And I think that's what we saw over the last part of the season. Early in the year, the guys got off offensively to a really tough start, right? You can go back and look at a lot of those games where it was very close, 5th, 6th, 7th inning, but we couldn't score some runs. And then all of a sudden, on a daily basis, they're trying to figure out, holy cow, I thought I was going to have this kind of season. We were going to have this kind of season. And they lost sight of some of the day-to-day. Okay, turn the page to tomorrow. It's really hard to do that when everybody was scuffling at the same time. So I think what we learned over the course of the year as a unit was as much how to turn the page to the next day, positive or negative, from the day before. And I think that's what gives us the optimism for growth into next year, is that guys understand now that one bad day doesn't make the next day bad, and one good day doesn't make the next day good either. So understanding that all happens on an individual level within the team, that's where the optimism comes from.
Another question. When we started this year, only Bobby Witt was the one who was going to stay at shortstop, not play any other position. Now you're basically saying the infield is set. So do you feel more comfortable that guys have shown you what they can do, Michael Garcia, Vinny, that they can not have to rotate to a lot of different positions, maybe in a pinch, maybe for injury, maybe to give a guy a day off, but for the most part, you're more comfortable setting positions around Bobby, not just him?
Yeah, I think from an infield perspective, guys have done enough to allow us to believe going into the year we don't have to go out and acquire, anybody in the infield. But what we do need is balance, because I learned a lot from Q this year, the way he wants to put lineups together, matchups. We need optionality with, a right-handed version to play second base or third base, or give Michael a night off, or give Bobby a rare night off. He didn't get too many of them. So we need to have a complete roster. But the guys that we're referring to right now, we're encouraged by what they've done, and we don't feel like that's a glaring need. We need to go get any one of those infield positions, but we do need to upgrade and have better balance in a deeper 13-man position player roster.
Several follow-ups. One on the subject of the slow start and everything. Have you identified problems or changes that need to be made in spring training? You look back and say, flaw in the approach, or is it just, hey, baseball happens and everybody was in a slump to start?
Well, I mean, sure, we're going to do that again on an individual basis. I mean, I think we've identified some things that individual players can tweak about their own approaches. I don't think it's a glaring, we're breaking that down and not doing anything we did last year in spring training, because you're around the game for a certain amount of time and you see how different teams do it. You see different approaches, and you see that there isn't one cookie cutter way to go into spring training and everybody gets this number of at bats, or everybody plays this number of back-to-back days, or this many innings pitched. So we're not going to tear it down and say we're starting and reinventing the wheel. What we will address is how certain guys prepared, not in the offseason, but on their day-to-day, and how they might do a little more individual work or a little less cage work, or whatever the case is for hitters. And the one obvious thing is we're going to have our whole team there the whole spring, right? We'll have Bobby for the whole spring. We'll have Brady for the whole spring. So we'll be able to do some more of the team building, if you want to say, those types of things. Just having them around each other more will be a definite help.
That's spring, but we know guys all seem to go, whether it's their agent or the baseball, workout facility in their own. Like, do you have a plan that those guys, I mean, I'm sure they're going to take some time off, but it seems like everybody we hear about, I was working on this pitch, or I was doing that. I mean, have you identified that there were issues maybe with what guys were doing before they even got to spring training that need to be maybe tweaked?
Well, that's across the industry. Almost every guy has their own private facility, private coach, those kinds of things. And to a man, every one of our staff members will be in touch with those people and have already started that in the months gone by, right? Players are communicating daily with us on what their plans are, and our guys are, in touch with those guys and having constant communication. It's like another coach that we're working with to make sure we agree or the player understands our point of view on those things. So yes, that's constantly being evaluated.
And then J.J., I think Sam asked if you knew what the payroll was, and it was a one-word answer, no.
Yeah.
There's that.
It hasn't been determined yet. I mean, we'll continue to discuss it. I have a general idea of where we're at, but where we're going to go, we're not sure yet. We're just getting into that phase now. But look, I also want to say this about that. Whatever the rules of engagement are, it's our job to get the most out of it. So whether it's $100 million, $120 million, or $80 million, it's our job to get the most out of it. And teams have won with lesser payrolls. So that can't be why or what I wake up thinking about every day. What I need to wake up thinking about is talking to people in our front office, talking to Q, how can we make this team better and not get too focused on payroll.
Yeah, I do understand that there are limitations in this market and everything, but also no business can run with no concept of what kind of money they've got to spend.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an overstatement, but we have an idea what we're working with, but I don't know the number.
Right. And do you have a framework even beyond this year? Because when you talk about long-term guys, I assume at some point someone's going to ask you if Bobby Witt's going to get a deal. To be able to put together that deal, to maybe get creative with the way you would put that together, it would seem like having at least a framework of what you have this year and years to come.
There's going to be a lot of things that change in this game. I think as the years come, in particular in Kansas City, obviously there's a stadium that we're excited about, and that may change our revenues. There's things that may change within the game itself that could really impact what we can do long term. So there's some things I think we are considering, but it'll take some time to put that together. Right now we've got $30 million that are coming off the books, so we've got some flexibility there, and that's good. That's a great start, and we do have a level of expectation. Some guys still need to continue to move in the right direction because the beauty of having a young team is there's not a lot of payroll tied up in that young team. So we have to be optimistic about that, but. Yes, there will be projections, and as I think things become a little bit more clear with things outside of just our payroll, we may be in a better position moving forward.
You also, hang on a second. You also mentioned that you went through the hitters and you said something to the effect of options give us options, right? If a guy's got an option, we can find something better. On the pitching, I think you said, your three things, Bobby, Kyle, can they play the spots? And then the pitching, it sounded like, okay, we didn't check that box.
Yeah.
And we would be moving forward, I think was how you put it. Is that to state that we've given the in-house candidates the try and now it's...
They need to compete. Yeah, they're gonna be on our roster, but they need to compete. Nothing's going to be given to any player at any time. I mean, obviously, some players earn. Like Bobby has earned the right for us to sit here today and say he's our shortstop. There are players right now that haven't earned that. So, and I think the level of patience that we've shown, the opportunity we've given guys, is adequate. But we need to start thinking more about what do we need to do to enhance this roster and not be as cognizant of who's on the roster right now. And if we can get better, we're going to get better, and that's ultimately the goal of our front office.
Just because that was on that topic, how many rotation spots do you think are up for grabs? Like what?
Yeah. So, Jordan Lyles, we expect to be in a rotation. And I'll tell a quick story. When we were interviewing Jordan last year on Zoom, he asked maybe the best question that I've been asked. If I sign here, what's the expectation? What's going to make this a successful signing? Our answer was 180 innings. And he gave us just about 180 innings. Now, I think Jordan would be the first one to tell you he expects to pitch better, and he's in Charlotte right now. He's working on things he can do to get better and more prepared for next season, so he's hungry to pitch better, but he'll be back next year. Brady had an up and down year, going back to the question Seren had about looking back at spring training. That impacted us. Brady being in the WBC and not being able to be built up properly, and then us trying to ramp him up quickly. There was a lot of inconsistencies with his year that I think can be traced back to December. And we count on Brady in our rotation. And obviously Cole Reagans, is the other one. But the last two spots are up for grabs, and that's a healthy thing. I don't think it's a coincidence that when Cole started pitching well, the expectations and the performance, not across the board, but in certain players, it was eye-opening, and that's what we want. We want healthy competition.
My turn. JJ, you identified certain things in trades midseason, getting Nelson Velasquez impact right-handed bat, Cole Reagans to be a potential frontline starter. Is there anything you're looking for specifically this offseason to help build a team around, like, I guess, adding specific players or whatnot?
Yeah, well, Cole's clearly helped us out. Velasquez has helped us out. We're really excited about it. I mean, that was a trade. I call it kind of a baseball trade, because from our end we were looking for right-handed power, and that was an opportunity for us to get right-handed power. Didn't like giving up Jose Cuas, but because we felt like he could be a consistent performer for us. But it's sort of the cost of doing business. It's just a baseball trade that's worked out well for both teams, I believe. So we'll see. He's still a young player, so there's still a lot to be. Let's see where it goes with him, but it's exciting to see what he's doing. He's providing something for us that we were thirsty for along the way, going back to the beginning of the year with Franmil Reyes, trying to find some power, so that's good. But between he and Isbell, and MJ, there's still opportunity for us to upgrade in the outfield and create more depth in our lineup. So, he's going to be a part of it.
Since Seren put it on the tee, where do things stand with Bobby Witt and following this trend of signing young players long term?
Well, it's clearly a goal of ours to sign Bobby long term. I mean, he's an exciting player. He's one of the best young players in the game. We would be foolish to not try to sign him long term. So we are working on that. I don't really want to comment on it more than that's a goal of ours. It would be exciting to do so. Special player, and we want to try to keep special players in our uniform.
You actually, of all the people in here, mentioned the stadium first, knowing that's not something that impacts you and what you're trying to do, putting a team on the field that's still out there concurrently with what you're doing. signing a guy like Bobby, is that a message that needs to be sent to fans that are skeptical about building a new ballpark?
Yeah, I kind of look at it differently. Whether we're playing in Kauffman Stadium or a new stadium, we want Bobby in the lineup and here for as long as we can have him here. So I think it's a little more maybe coincidental. We got a potential new stadium down the road, but from a baseball perspective, we want Bobby in our uniform.
One more. You mentioned the coaching staff is all coming back intact. You've made a lot of changes elsewhere in the organization, including just the last month. Do you envision more changes happening?
It's starting to settle in. I think any other additions are probably not as newsworthy as a scouting director or pro director, but they're building their staffs out. We've hired a few more people since the 2 new directors have come on. We've hired I think it's 3 or 4 guys. We're probably going to hire another 3 or 4 as we go through the offseason, but not as I think in the level you're talking about. I think we're settled with what we're doing going into 24.
2 questions. JJ, you mentioned we might possibly add to the coaching staff. Is there a specific area where you would look to add?
Deep, I don't know if you want to.
Well, we try to take an inventory, of what all the departments feel like worked well for them and what they feel like they could benefit from adding. So I think we're going to try to find, as we've said, we've been a very novice group of coaches, right? So we might be looking to find the best person we can add in any area that provides a little depth to the resume of what maybe they've done, an experienced coach in some area, whatever area that could be, hitting wherever we feel like they have the best chance to impact the whole staff.
No spot specifically.
Not one specific spot, no.
And then as far as MJ, you mentioned him with the outfielders. I'm wondering what the message is to him as far as behind the dish moving forward.
Yeah, we need to talk about that a little bit more, but I think when we made that change, it was clearly to try to jumpstart his bat. The second half of the year for him was much improved over the first half. So it's really going to be a matter of how much would he be catching. Salvi's going to be here. Freddie Fermin we're really happy with. Going into this year, Freddie didn't have the opportunity that he was given. Hadn't reached the confidence level we have in him now is greater than it was going into the year. So the need for MJ to catch isn't as great. I certainly think he has the ability to do it. But MJ's an offensive player, and we need to get production out of him offensively. And if it's in the outfield, we're comfortable with that.
I would just say one thing to that, Vern, is that as we started the year, and you guys see what the kind of beating Salvi takes day in and day out, and how many miles he's got on him. It was a tough thing for him early in the year. Like if we were going to give Salvi a day off and MJ was catching and something happens to MJ during the game, you don't want to put Salvi in a game when you're up or down 11 or MJ gets nicked up, because the days that he gets off, as you guys know, it's been decades of him not wanting a day off. If he has to have a day off, he needs a day off, unless he's going to pinch hit to win the game. So it was a tougher roster management thing that way as well. So we obviously did that for MJ's benefit, but it helps in a lot of different areas as well.
Matt, I'm sorry.
You mentioned the bullpen, you need to add to it. Do you have a closer on your team right now, or is that something that you?
Yeah, we're going to have to target it. The way Q manages bullpen, a lot of matchup. We were trying to get exposure and experiences for certain guys in leverage situations against certain parts of the lineup to see if they were potentially ready for that role. But as we said here today, we're going to have to find somebody, or it may end up being a group of guys, closer by committee. Again, we won't know that until we know who we acquire. But when you talk to like a Brian Sweeney about the evolution of the bullpen he was in charge of with his previous team, it was closer by committee until somebody stepped forward. That may be the situation. It just depends on the roster, how we construct our roster, who's on it.
Matt, JJ mentioned, finding maybe some options for you, like, getting out to like a right-handed, maybe some matchups. How close how far away, I guess maybe would be a better one, for having all the weapons you would like, whether it's, I know J.J. said there's a lot of work in the bullpen, but the position players, you see 2-3 guys that give you that platoon possibility that are out there. I mean, now that you've had a chance to evaluate what you have, how many, weapons do you need, overall to have the kind of team that I would think you would envision?
Well, I think I'd answer that in this way. You can never have enough good players. And we have to create a tremendous amount of depth, because as soon as you think you have enough, you don't, because somebody gets hurt, something happens away from the field, somebody underperforms. So you can never get enough good players within your organization. And you'll look around and see different ways that teams are constructed. But if we do the job that we're setting out to do, we're going to bring in as many good players as possible. So I would be completely remiss to sit here and tell you we need 2 or we need 1, because then if that person comes in and doesn't perform, then we haven't done our job to build a complete, not only a complete 26-man roster, but a complete 40-man and minor league free agents, because you don't know where your roster supplementation is going to come from, because you don't know what's going to happen. There's a tremendous amount of randomness to what happens, not only on the field, but with injuries.
One for Matt and one for JJ, if I could. Matt, you were so focused on pushing everybody else forward and keeping everybody else on track, but what sort of challenge was it for you to have the start that it was and the season go that way, and how much did you have to reach into your reservoir of patience?
Well, I feel really fortunate that that's probably one of my better characteristics, is patience. Was it frustrating? Completely. I mean, nobody sets out on any season, regardless of what sport or what level, to lose, right? And, we got punched in the face early, and we didn't recover from a, win-loss record standpoint. But I will say part of the reason I was able to be patient is because I believe in what we're doing process-wise. You guys have heard me from day one, right? I mean, we're not going to turn things on a dime, right? But the process is the people that I interact with every day, whether it's coaches, front office, R&D, support personnel, they're tremendous people, and we had really healthy conversations. Not all of them were always comfortable, but I think that's what helped me, draw some strength and really keep going forward. The other part of it is, and I've said this before, and I don't mean to be flippant about it, but what's the alternative, right? You don't come in here and curl up in the corner and cry about it, right? I mean, this is a win-loss industry, and you're gonna show up here every day to compete, and my patience does not mean I'm not competitive and I show up here every day to go out there and kick somebody's butt. We got our butt kicked a lot more than I would like, but I'm certainly not going to show up here and ask for people to feel sorry for me, because that doesn't happen in this, not only in this game but in this world, right? And that's the competitiveness that is in that room that you might not see every day when you just look at the record.
And JJ, just sort of, I realize this could be in flux and subject to change, but what might you say about Salvy's future and how you project him going forward in time, his future as a Royal?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've got a couple years with Salvy, and he reiterated on his way out the door, that he loves being a Royal, wants to be in Kansas City. He also follows that up with, I understand it's a business, so, but he wants nothing more than to be a part of this team winning again. He's the guy in our clubhouse who has experienced success at its highest level in baseball. He feels good about where our team is. He feels better as the season ended than he did in the middle of the year, which is encouraging. And when we evaluate, when we think about leadership and veteran presence and needing more of it, Salvy represents that. So I think the more of the challenge for us, which we've already had these beginning discussions with him, is how can we get him through the season effectively. He loves catching. He wants to catch 140 games a year, but he also knows he's not in a position right now to catch 140 games. And he also understands that for our team to win more games, he may have to take a step back and be more willing to DH or play first base. I mean, we got a chance to watch him play first base, and it's solid. I mean, it's above average. So, but because he has such a good attitude and desire to win, those conversations are easier. And, he'll be a part of this. And, we look forward to having him back and look forward to him being a part of a team that wins again in Kansas City.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.